Welcome on in, everybody. It's the State of Football Part 30 edition here on this 9/11 2020 edition, a day in infamy here, trying to keep it all together and get through today. So we are doing this show with heavy hearts. Of course, I'm here in New Jersey, John Murphy down in New Orleans, but from New York, a lot of family up here that were affected, impacted by 9/11. But let's be honest, David Turner out in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a day in infamy that my generation, it's kind of our JFK moment. Everybody knows where they were on that exact moment. In fact, it was about 13 minutes from now when the first plane hit the tower. So, our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to all those families and folks and friends that were impacted on this very day. So, we will never forget, right? And I think of a time in this country where it was opposite of what I see a lot in our country now. We were as strong as ever. We were together more than ever that I could remember. And hopefully, we can use today to reflect on that time of unity, togetherness, and the I've got your back mentality, because I think a lot of society today is really, really, really not together. So, this is a football show. It's the State of Football. It's Rick Saratella, John Murphy, David Turner. On the positive note, we move on to the football season, which kicked off last night, underway. And, there's a lot of places we can start with this one. So I will turn it over to my co-host, John Murphy, and the Chiefs coming out victorious, controlling the clock, kind of what we saw, and keeping those out there in Vegas holding their breath to the very final seconds with a 54-point total there.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, the thing that stood out to me the most, is what I posted at halftime. Unfortunately, we mentioned that, this was going to be a game that the Chiefs win. You kind of knew what you're getting out of the Chiefs. The offense gets going. They're going to get going on most weeks. The Texans, however, if they come out and don't have a game where, they're performing on all cylinders, it's immediately, going to be everybody running to the hills, talking about what they did in the offseason, what they've really done the last two off seasons, in attempt to kind of change their culture, and their hopes get over the hump, and finally go from division winners to Super Bowl contenders. And I think you saw last night, there is a long way to go for the Texans, to get to the level of where the Chiefs are at. Where were the secondary weapons? This was the whole idea, was to get, not just one guy, three or four guys, spread the ball around. I did see it sometimes a little more tempo. They were trying to get the ball out of it, Deshaun Watson's hands a little quicker than what you saw. But the Chiefs have a solid front. Chris Jones, is a guy that's making, a lot of noise, week in and week out, in terms of how to block them. But boy, for investing, in Titus Howard, the money you have in Tunsil, you got sharpening back from injury. You have a veteran guy in there in Fulton. Man, there were a lot of times where that pocket was not clean, for Deshaun Watson. And that's not a good sign if their A guys are going to struggle, because they struggled with their B guys, but that's because sharpening was out, as was Titus Howard. If you're going to struggle with your A guys, I think they're going to have some problems. I mean, the good thing was you saw David Johnson, and he looked a lot more like David Johnson. However, the problem for the Texans was you saw Bill O'Brien, and he looked a lot like Bill O'Brien. So again, here's something not to do. You're playing the best offense in the league. They're getting the ball to start the second half. You have a kicker who's average at 45 yards. Do not try a 51-yard field goal at the end of the half to then allow them to throw two balls, kick a field goal, and get the ball to start the second half. I pretty much think that the game was kind of written, in that 10 or 12 minute on the field, timing there from the end of the first half to the beginning of the second half. Because once it's 24-7, it's a wrap. The only question was it going to be 34-20 or 48-7? And, luckily it was, 34-20. So I think, there's a lot of question marks coming out of that. I think you saw the Chiefs, and they're going to be a contender as long as they're healthy. And you flip the other way and you see the Texans, man, in a division that we're already talking about being very tough. They've done this 100 times, right? I mean, we've seen it. So that's the only reason I say don't jump off the cliff if you're the Texans, or Texans fans. But boy, wouldn't you one time like to see them kind of show you that it might be a different season, than losing to all the good teams and then just beating the division and getting to your playoff game as the worst divisional winner. I don't think you're going to get away with that, this year with the Colts, and especially not the Colts and the Titans. So I think if you're the Texans, there's a lot of work, to be done there, and the offensive line play and the factor that your secondary weapons really did not show up, that would be concerning to me, and was not surprising to see. If you put Vernon Hargreaves on a real receiver, that's going to be the pretty much weekly results you get. And I think the back end of the Texans defense would be something else that we'll have to either see some maturity or some different looks, with when you're playing teams that have above average passing games, or else I think a lot of these weeks are going to look a lot like last night.
Well, I think you saw how much ground the Texans still have to make up here. And we talked about the revamped wide receiving group. Well, it just didn't get the job done yesterday, David, where the Chiefs, all the focus, Tyreek Hill is like a decoy half the time out there. And other guys are Kelsey, Watkins, McCole Hardman, say what you want. He can't catch a football, Demarcus Robinson, but you still have to account for him. Whereas when Watson dropped back, he sorely missed DeAndre Hopkins. As John mentioned yesterday, 35% of his yardage last year went to DeAndre Hopkins. I will say this about the run game. I'm still convinced David Johnson's a wide receiver playing running back. On the other end is, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I thought it was interesting. The NFL.com is unveiling these 6 new next-gen stats. And I don't think it's so much analytics. I think it's just interesting stats. So, like last night, there was a stat where, with 6 or less in the box, Clyde Edwards-Helaire on 10 carries had 96 yards. So he almost averaged 10 yards a clip. When the Texans brought down 7 or more, that went down to 3 yards per carry. But as you know, the Legion of Zoom, you start bringing those guys down in the box, that's just going to lead to big plays and big touchdowns with that Chiefs offense. I think that's why they're so tough to beat.
Well, and I agree with you. Last night, what we saw out of Clyde Helaire adding to this Chiefs offense is nitrous. Now they have a run game. Now they have somebody making them drop a 7th into the box and therefore having trouble. I think his actual numbers were skewed there a little bit, and I didn't look at how they graded it, Rick, so you can correct me on this. But listening to you right there, were the goal line runs in there? Because if the goal line runs were in there where they had 9 in the box on them, then that skewed his runs, because even when they had 7 in the box in the field from the 30 to the 30, I felt the Chiefs ran the ball really effective, and we're picking up that 4 yards per clip, which is what you need in a run game with this kind of offense, because now Mahomes has a play action. They have RPO stuff going, and it just becomes even more of a headache for defenses. I mean, that run game really is nitrous for this passing offense. And, for me last night when I was watching the Texans, the defense at first looked like it was confusing Mahomes with the different zones they were throwing, because it wasn't so much man look. But then Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy went back and they, did some great in real time coaching and adjustments, and they figured it out. And then boom, it was just like wide open. And did you realize Randall Cobb was even on the field last night? Because he didn't touch the ball. And I'm like, well, you got Randall Cobb here. Like, how is he not touching the ball once? Like, I just got amazed by that. You got to find a way to get the ball in your playmaker's hands, and he didn't get one touch. And I didn't even see it going to his way one time. So to me, that's just like, it goes back to coaching, like John said. O'Brien, to me, is a myth. I think he's a guy who, is all hype and no content. And without Hopkins there, it's going to really expose a lot of his lack of coaching, because Hopkins was his one playmaker. I mean, he was the one guy you could put the ball in the hands or trust that was going to go make a play, rise to the occasion. And now he filled his team with a bunch of track stars that, again, I mean, their right guard looked like he was a turnstile. You want to talk about the Jersey turnstile? I mean, Chris Jones had no problem getting to the quarterback last night. And I mean, it was multiple moves. You want to talk about a little scout speak here. You saw a push pull from Chris Jones. You saw hand sweeps. You saw getting skinnies. You got a lot of stuff. He even did an in and out, which was beautiful. And I was just like, whoa, this kid's got a lot of repertoire. Oh, and by the way, it's all working. So if that's going to be their right guard all year, I think a lot of the interior defensive linemen just licked their chops that were in that division because they're like, okay, thanks, Chris. You showed us everything that will work on this guy. We got our notes down now on how to beat this guy inside, and that's the most direct route to the quarterback. So that's going to be a problem too for them all season if Deshaun's off his spot and having to scramble around like we saw last night. And again, like John was saying, their secondary is exactly what I was thinking before the game yesterday, which is a huge question mark. They can't just line up and man across the board and do press. They got to do zone, and in the NFL, too much zone is going to get you beat.
Yeah, Chris Jones, I mean, guys that big shouldn't be able to move that fast and that quick. What an agile athlete for the 300-plus big man there. Frank Clark obviously chipping in, and we saw that formula work for the Chiefs on their Super Bowl run last year. I will give a quick shout-out here to our guy, L'Jarius Sneed. Kudos. I mean, we had him out at the NFLPA Bowl, and it was consensus. I mean, our scouting staff post-event sat down and all agreed this was the best player during the week, the best of the 115 guys we had out there. He winded up being selected in the third or fourth round, our highest player selected, and I had no idea that he was going to earn the start last night until they put up the graphic and showed L'Jarius Sneed. And I think he had his hands full with Will Fuller last night, but for a first career start, coming down with the interception there when Watson was pressured, a couple pass deflections. So I think L'Jarius Sneed, oh, by the way, someone that we had on during our draft coverage, I'll post that on Twitter so you guys can go back and learn about that young man because he's a stellar person also, and he's somebody that you're going to want to get to know. The final takeaway I'll tell you is, what we found out is that, Bill O'Brien tried to replace a thoroughbred with a bunch of mules and got taken to the woodshed. So Kansas City 1-0, Houston Texans 0-1. And boy, oh boy, we have some fun here. We're going to get into some predictions, some game previews. I know everybody's been anticipating our Super Bowl predictions. We've had all our guests along the way put those out there. And oh, by the way, the Hurricanes escaped with a 15-point victory over UAB. My De'Aaron King Heisman hopes didn't get out to an arousing start, but 184 yards passing. I think another 70 yards rushing or so, 3 touchdowns on the day. You want to win the Heisman, I think you got to put up gaudier stats than that against UAB, but a good start nonetheless for De'Aaron King and the Miami Hurricanes. Quincy Roach, by the way, had a big game, a lot of pressures, did collect 1 sack, I believe, and that's a guy that we're going to monitor, probably a early day 2 guy right now, the transfer from Temple, so some college football action there last night. We have a day, I believe, without football. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? And we have a slew of games on the docket for this upcoming weekend. Johnny, who is your state of football NCAA featured matchup of the week?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good ones still, even though we don't have much of a schedule here, to play around with. But I think a game that's interesting for the parts of, just looking at one team that's, clearly a national championship type contender and another team that unfortunately had to fill a spot on the schedule, is Missouri State and Oklahoma. And the real feature in that is a transfer quarterback at Missouri State, Jaden Johnson, who's coming from Southern Miss. But the interesting part was he was originally recruited by Bobby Petrino to Louisville. Petrino leaves. He ends up at Southern Miss. Petrino gets the Missouri State job, and all of a sudden Jaden Johnson follows him there. So here's a 4-star quarterback at Missouri State. Now they're playing Oklahoma, so we may see some flashes out of them, and then unfortunately a 59-7 trouncing. But it will also be Spencer Rattler's first game, and we mentioned it yesterday. Oklahoma has a lot of weapons, really good offensive line, and this could be another juggernaut-looking offense, for them. So I think that's a very interesting game to see from Oklahoma's standpoint. Can you put all the noise away, and with a straight freshman quarterback, can you come out there and perform the way that people expect? Two other ones that I think you want to keep an eye on. Georgia Tech hasn't announced who's playing quarterback. Florida State, with a new coach, new staff, new situation, at home, regardless of who's there and who's paying attention, do not lose to Georgia Tech coming out the gate, in that scenario. So I was a little worried about BYU playing against Navy with that rushing attack and not seeing it, not practicing, as much. Georgia Tech, what are we going to see out of them offensively? Same old Georgia Tech, or potentially some really interesting wrinkles? It'll be interesting to see how Florida State takes on Georgia Tech there. And the final one will be, is this the year that Ian Book puts it all together? Look down the stretch, 13 touchdowns, no interceptions, including the bowl game. Really interesting to see what kind of season Notre Dame has playing in the ACC as kind of the +1 for the ACC. And a lot of people will be looking forward to that Notre Dame-Clemson matchup to just see what does Ian Book look like now as a senior. Because like I said, coming down the stretch of last year, it looked like he had kind of gotten over those humps, and bumps in the road, as a sophomore, junior, and down the stretch played very good football for them. So it'll be really interesting to see, how does he and their team speed will really be challenged differently by playing an ACC schedule than the usual schedule they have.
Yeah, Ian Book, a guy, when you talk to the folks around the program and the coaching staff at Notre Dame, they're really high on this kid. I think it's a little bit of perception deception because they believe he could be a first-round pick. I won't go that far, but I will say he's in the mix for a Senior Bowl invite. He's on the NFLPA Bowl watch list. And, in fact, there's about a dozen guys on that Notre Dame team that, we're keeping an eye on here leading up to the 2021 NFL draft in Cleveland. I will say Jeff Collins last year, his first year at Georgia Tech, he didn't really have the personnel to do it, but you saw him try to move away from that Paul Johnson triple option type of attack. I think a lot of that will depend on who the quarterback is named, and I'm not sure that he still has his players just yet, only a couple years into the to that program. But they get a Florida State team, like you said, with a new coach, with the new quarterback. However, Vegas, I'm seeing this line keep going like this in favor of Florida State. So they are anticipating a blowout there. Could be closer than you think. Bobby Petrino, God, this guy has got more lives than a cat. He just continues to resurface. I mean, he is the modern day Teflon Don, Bobby Petrino is. And, hats off to that man just for being able to survive. God bless him. So there is your NCAA preview brought to you by John Murphy. We also have the Maverick Sports Game of the Week, brought to you by Maverick Sports Consulting. Go check out those guys over there. None other than David Turner will bring you that update.
Well, if we're talking college football, my game of the week it's Florida State, Georgia Tech, right? I want to see that game like you guys were talking about. That's the one I picked that I think would be the most interesting on the docket this weekend for college football, because again, you don't know what you're getting out of Georgia Tech. You got a rookie head coach from Florida State, so it's a great matchup right there. But my NFL pick of the week, well, I think I'm already tipping my hat here. It's Carolina versus Oakland. So Carolina versus Oakland, obviously, both organizations. I'm really excited about this game because I really want to see what Teddy Bridgewater and that new offense looks like in Carolina. I think Teddy Bridgewater is marked to be comeback player of the year. So for me, I really would love to see what Carolina is going to do and look like on offense, and then seeing them pick all defense in the draft is another interesting thing. I want to see what those young defensive players that they picked come out and look like now. It's going to be a revamped Carolina team organization. I think there's going to be a lot of energy there. So it's really interesting for me to watch this game, obviously with my two-team bias here, and two former teams lining it up. And then Oakland also is very interesting to me to see Vegas. I can't do it. I'm just going to have to call them the Raiders. So the Raiders are very interesting to me to see what they look like, because I think they've had some changeover. I'm not really sold on all their receivers. I think they have some good ones, but let's see what they look like. Let's see if they can come out and make a statement like the Chiefs did last night, because you see what they have to contend with. The Chiefs are going to be on the gas all year. They're going to be a 13-2, 13-3, 14-2 type team. Can Oakland keep pace, or are they not going to? And this is a game where Oakland should win it, but we'll see if they can win it. It's in Carolina. I believe the over-under is set up like 47.5 points, which to me was kind of like high for this game. I don't know if it's going to be that much scoring. And Carolina's, +3. So, I think, in this game, it's going to be really interesting. It's our map pick of the week, the game to watch.
Yeah, and, they're doing the cross-country travel there. The Las Vegas Raiders are coming into Carolina, the coaching debut of Matt Rule. And we'll see. He's got some exciting parts. The offensive coordinator there, Brady, who comes over from LSU, had Bridgewater during his time with the Saints, so he knows the offense. We know Robbie Anderson was brought down from the Jets, who played for Rule at Temple. He knows the offense. And then also, Bridgewater, if you're concerned about the durability there, PJ Walker, who you might remember from the Alliance League and the XFL League, shout out to both of those guys. The Alliance League putting in 21 guys on NFL rosters, the XFL having 17. But you got to feel good if you're Coach Rule, at least, that even if Bridgewater does go down like he's been known to do, you've got a guy in there who knows the offense. There's not a lot of learning that needs to be done. So that'll be an interesting backup quarterback. And just because he knows the system, maybe one of the more valuable quarterbacks in the league. So did we get a prediction there from David Turner on that Panthers-Raiders game?
Wow, I just picked the game to look at. You want me to pick I got friends listening on both sides.
Towing the wire. We'll give them a pass. I'll give you a winner. I'll give you a winner.
I got the hat. They're at home. I'm going to call Panthers winning this one. Close game, but I think the output's going to be the under. It's not going to be the over.
All right, there you go. David Turner with the Panthers-Raiders preview. I'm going to go next here. It's the State of Football. Football Friday preview. Each and every Friday, we're going to break down the games of the week, and I'm going to go over to the NFL side where the Packers and Vikings will play in a black and blue NFC North divisional matchup, which I think will kind of dictate early on here who's going to control the lead of this division, right? And it's kind of a statement game here on week one. I think the Packers are a team that a lot of people are kind of underrating, maybe after being overrated last year. People saying, hey, this isn't really a true 13-win team, despite what it said on paper. They weren't really as dominant as their record said they were. And meanwhile, the Vikings continued to build up that defensive unit during the offseason. Now, Danielle Hunter, I believe, is out for 3 weeks. He's been placed on the IR. They do have Yannick Ngakoue. We'll see what kind of game shape he's in. I anticipate he'll start. Kendricks and Barr there in the linebacking unit. And my guy in the back from Notre Dame, Harrison Smith, is always going to be a presence. So, you like that? I like that. Minnesota Vikings here, I think, are going to kind of stake the claim, stake the territory. You kind of see the torch be passed over to the Vikings. I think they're going to be the team to beat in this division, and they're going to get off with a early W here. I don't know what the line is. I would imagine it's a field goal or less. We don't need the stinking points. Give me the money line Vikings all day for my NFL game of the week. I'll have another one for you, but first, John is going to go over to his NFL game of the week.
Yeah, so we're gonna take it to an interdivision rival in the AFC North, and one that is again one of these games where it's not just for one win, could really put one of these teams, in their season, and how their new season will go will be taken out of context after week one, and that is the Cleveland Browns playing against the Baltimore Ravens. So we do know one thing: the Browns coming into this season now with a lot of changes. And no preseason, a lot of flux, both on and off the field getting into this. And what will be interesting to see now is the Ravens spent a lot of their offseason trying to improve one area specifically. That is their run part of their defense. Calais Campbell, which is your favorite over there, Rick. My boy, Patrick Queen, the soon-to-be best linebacker of the rookie class from the LSU University. But either way, what we'll see on Sunday is Nick Chubb last year ran for 165 yards in one of the bigger upsets and one of the games that kind of surprised a lot of folks, where the Browns beat the Ravens 40-25 last year, and it was about a 200-yard rushing game by the Cleveland Browns. So, year later, with Stefanski, what kind of offense? What is this going to look like? There is some injury concern with Greedy Williams and J.C. Treader. For the Browns, that's your center and you're probably your second best cover guy, and two guys that you could not afford to be missing against the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, can he go back-to-back MVP? And can you see a maturation of the passing game to go along with, they have 1, 2, 3, maybe even a fourth guy who can run the ball on top of the quarterback, and Hollywood Brown out there. This is an offense that could even take another step, if their passing game starts matching up, with the run game they have and a defense that's obviously able to play, week in and week out consistently and hold teams to 20 or under. The Ravens are a Super Bowl contender for sure. And at least one thing we know, this year, if Baker S's the bed, we know that ODB might be right there next to him.
ODB, that stinking dog. Football Friday here on the State of Football. Rick Saratella, John Murphy, David Turner. And normally I would have given the Bucs at Saints to Murph because he's down there in New Orleans. But there's a reason why I took this game, and I'm going to tell you at the end. I do think the Saints will win this game at home, and they should win. It's a lot of moving parts in Tampa Bay. It's the dream team, so to speak, and there's a lot of things that need to be meshed together. I do think that it's interesting, O.J. Howard being listed as the starter. I think even Cameron Brate listed as the co-starter, and Rob Gronkowski is going to kind of be like this X-factor weapon, situational 20 to 25 snaps when we need a big play. I wouldn't be surprised you see 3 tight end lineups at some point there, but I think New Orleans will come out and win this game. However, let's keep an eye on that Alvin Kamara contract status. He said he's going to prepare as if this is his last season in New Orleans. Does that friction, does that tension carry into the locker room? Obviously, Drew Brees had a rough offseason. Does that linger around in the locker room? Are there concerns there? Sean Payton's a veteran head coach, so I'm sure he's out in front of it. But again, I think it's, you take a look at, I don't know how many years Sean Payton has been there. He's got to be close to one of the longest tenured coaches behind Belichick, Tomlin, and then, Harbaugh in Baltimore. I would imagine Payton is right up there. And so when you're talking about stability versus the Buccaneers, where, they had about 30 coaches last year. I don't know how many they have this year with the COVID, but they had a lot of new additions. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette. The list goes on and on. I'm excited to see Scotty Miller there in the slot. I think that's a new name that you'll hear from this season that you might not be too familiar with, playing, kind of in the middle there between Godwin and Mike Evans. Now, here's why I took the game. The Saints will come out victorious this week, but when they meet again, Tampa Bay will be moving and grooving. In fact, they will be rolling right in to the playoffs. And while I did predict the Saints to win that division, I do think the Bucs get in as a wild card. And once they get in, nobody's going to want to play them. And we are going to get somewhat of a story ending here. And I'm getting ahead of myself with one of my selections for my Super Bowl prediction. I will make you wait till the end of the show for my second half. But I am picking those Tampa Bay Buccaneers to steamroll the Saints in the second game, continue that momentum into the playoffs, and all the way back to their home field in Tampa Bay for the Super Bowl to become the first team in NFL history to play in their home stadium for the Super Bowl. Now, you are going to enjoy my other Super Bowl prediction. I told you it's not going to be the same old song and dance with all of our guests. I don't think anybody has picked the Tampa Bay Bucs in terms of our panel yet. And I know nobody has picked my other team. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show. And that is my prediction. Again, I think the Saints win this easily, 7 points, 10 points, no problem. Buccaneers will be in there in the fourth quarter. They'll keep it close. It'll be competitive. But I think the Saints kind of dictate the whole pace of the game, the time of possession, much like Kansas City did. The score will be a lot closer than the actual outcome. All right, one more game here on the docket for the NFL previews. Our game of the week out west. David Turner, what do you got?
Well, we got Arizona versus at the Niners. Now, one thing here, which is going to be an interesting twist, is air quality up there in the Bay Area now with all the fires. That is going to be the interesting twist here. I mean, you try to go to the field, the matchup, this and that, which there's fun stuff all over the place to talk about in this game. But the orange skies that are up in the Bay Area due to all those horrific fires that are happening out there is going to be a concern for a lot of these players and the health of their lungs and stuff. So with that being said, obviously there's no fans. There's nothing going on up in the Bay Area. It's completely shut down. But that'll be interesting in itself. Now, the Niners coming off their Super Bowl appearance, they added some key weapons, I think, this offseason. I think the defense got a little better. So I really like the Niners in this one. I really think the Niners are going to pull it out. But, Rick, I know you and your heartthrob cards are and your stars and hearts all over every time you look at Kyle Murray. It's like a cartoon. It's like the old Bugs Bunny when he looks at Kyle Murray, the hearts just fly out of his eyes, start bugging out of his head. So, I don't know how Samantha puts up with you talking about Kyle Murray. I would just be like, come on, let it go. Bromance is bromance, but seriously. But here, I just think, again, I think the Cards are going to be improved this year. I do not like their offensive line. I think the Niners are going to cause pressure. It's going to be a similar thing that what you saw last night, where the pressure is going to cause Kyle to move off his spot a lot, and they're going to have to improvise. Now, that being said, they picked up Hopkins. They still have Fitzgerald. They have weapons for him. If he moves off his spot, they know how to get open. These are guys that are very, very well versed in that basketball fast break kind of, hey, we got to improvise here really quick. So it's going to be a fun game. I think it's a must-watch game. I think if you're tuning in, this is going to be something that we talk again about on Monday when we're like, oh, my God, did you see that kind of game? Did you see what they did? It's going to be back and forth. Vegas is an over-under at 48. I think they get there and they go past it with these two offenses. And, San Francisco at 7, I don't know if they cover. I think it could be close, like a 3-point game. But I still think San Francisco winds up pulling this one out.
Well, we will come back Monday and discuss it. I think it's going to be a track meet for these Cardinals, along with Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella. I think, San Francisco does have somewhat of a home field advantage being surrounded by the fires. I don't know if it's trickled into Arizona or not, but I'll tell you this. I look at San Francisco and I say, where's the playmakers? Where's the big plays coming from? They don't have anybody.
The rook receiver, baby. They picked up one of the best receivers in the draft now.
That's who you're depending on to make big plays? Okay. Well,
He's a big player, baby.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, when you match up the playmakers on the 49ers side of the ball, and you look at what Arizona's got going on, they better pray Arizona doesn't jump up to an early lead, because they'll never catch up. The 49ers will never catch up. They just don't have the playmakers. You heard it here first. We've got a big disagreement going on. And I'm curious to come back on Monday, because, again, I don't need the touchdown. I don't need the 7. Give me the money line. Cardinals, upset of the week. That's my pick. I'm sticking to it. Murphy, you got to weigh in on this one.
Dude, this is you right now. Boom, 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 boom.
You'll see.
He'll take
40 touchdowns for Tyler this week.
We're seeing where what are the Niners' plan, and how do you defend? Because getting Simmons to fall to them could turn out to be a sneaky good thing for the Cardinals, because are they able to take his vast different abilities and use them in this context against the Niners to almost shadow or shut down, George Kittle as much as you can potentially limit him? Is Isaiah Simmons give Arizona, the Cardinals, a guy that might actually be able to give Kittle a run for his money, at least to keep him in check? And if that's true, then all of a sudden what Rick said, probably has a lot more, there. If you put the game on Jimmy's shoulders, we haven't always seen that turn out, to be too good. And, so I think the other thing is to see, the down the stretch, Raheem Mostert, is that the same guy we get when everybody now knows that he's getting the ball? And that's an interesting battle between those two running backs, because everybody now knows that somehow whatever happened on that flight when he got traded from Miami to Arizona, Kenyon Drake was able to get himself a really good meal and some really good supplements or something on that flight, because he went from a dud to a stud, pretty much overnight on one flight, to Arizona. So I think now the teams know what to expect. That'll be interesting to see on who you can key on and who you don't. And it'll be interesting to see, is it DeAndre Hopkins right out the gate, or can they use Hopkins the way that Tyreek Hill is used at times and others are able to thrive and make plays for the Cardinals? And if that starts happening, that's when you're going to see some real points start showing up, for Arizona. Because I think Hopkins can make his own plays, but it'll be really interesting to see with a young quarterback if he opens the game up for others. And I think the thing for the Niners is, how does that defensive front play? Because I think their back end is still – that's the part that I still think, if you're a Niners fan defensively, yeah, you still got to kind of, work that out on the back end. The front end, Javon Kinlaw replacing DeForest Buckner, that'll be something to watch, there. Because if you want to take a shot at one thing with Arizona, it's that, offensive line-wise, they still need to come together this year and prove that some of the improvement that they made last year was not a fluke, because now it's expected. Last year, we saw what we thought we saw at times out of their offense. This year, the Cardinals are basically this year's Cleveland Browns, right? So there's a lot riding on this, and you don't want to come out of it, and kind of falter, right off the bat, because we saw how that worked last year. I'm a big believer that Kingsbury has something, for now until the defenses catch up with it. So I think it's a close game. But I would say that, the Niners I'm going with this one where the Niners get this one and Arizona the second time, and I think the over-under to me would be interesting to see how much closer this division ends up between 2 or 3 of these teams. I don't think anybody's running away with this division at all.
All right, so, hey, we've got a consensus. It's the 49ers. It's all good. And, the Arizona Love Fest will continue on Monday. Make sure you tune in 9 a.m. Eastern. I'll be talking about my guy Chase Edmonds from Fordham with his 2 touchdowns down at the goal line. We've got a few minutes left to play until our Super Bowl predictions. David, I think the one other game that's kind of popping out to me here that's kind of intriguing from a mentor versus protege is Miami at New England. And we had Omar Kelly on the show recently, and I know that the entire Sun Sentinel all picked the Dolphins. I think it was the first time in a long time that all the writers from the Dolphins that cover the Dolphins all picked Miami to win a game. This is in New England now. Again, you look at the roster. Where's the playmakers? Julian Edelman is kind of their top target there, but he's not really necessarily a game breaker. Sony Michel, I think, will do some kind of interesting things there, but we all know Belichick likes to use that committee backfield approach. And then, Miami does have a solid young nucleus and a veteran quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick who knows how to get the job done. The Fitz magic usually rises early and fades late, but Fitzpatrick's has got a little kind of track record here for getting out of the gates early in the season like a gangbuster. Where do you see this game playing out? How do you see it playing out with Miami traveling to New England?
I see how it usually plays out. New England wins. I mean, this is not hard. This is an easy one. We're still talking about the Dolphins, which, again, I love Chris Greer. When I started my career in 2002, Chris was a scout at the Dolphins. I got to know him. I've been friends with him. Many of the staff and the scout, the whole time they've been there, it's been phenomenal to stay with those friendships. And I think they've turned the corner. I really do. What they did in this year's draft, they have a really good, strong coach. I think you're starting to see them build those cornerstones. But this is a team still a year or two away from really galvanizing and bringing it all together. So for me, when I look at the Dolphins, they're going to go to New England. They're going to give a good game, but they're not coming out with the victory. Cam Newton, again, I was with him. He's a freak athlete. If he is healthy, it's ridiculous what he can do. If he's healthy, I mean, it's just unfair. And you look at the roster breakdown like you guys did on Monday. I don't know if there's a team in the league that has more veterans on their roster than the New England Patriots. When they did their cuts, Belichick kept, I think, only 8 rookies throughout the whole roster. Everybody else is a 3 to 15-year vet that he kept. He wanted guys that have been through the war, did not need a preseason to galvanate. Or I think Miami has a young team. They could have used preseason to galvanate. They're a team that, again, week 8 through 16, going to be a better team. Chris will be getting better as it go, whereas the Patriots are going to be able to come out of the blocks running because they have the veteran team knowing what to do. It's going to look more precise. Coaching's going to show through. And it's, to me, it's just the second game, like you guys have been saying for other games, the second game will be more interesting than this game.
Well, I kind of saw the strides being made there in Miami, so I think this game might be a little bit closer than you think. However, I do have Cam Newton slotted as my comeback player of the year. It'll be interesting to see just how quickly he can get that engine revved up there in New England. John, I'll let you weigh in on that Dolphins-Patriots game, but I also want to pick your brain on the Sunday night football matchup of the week, and that's the Dallas Cowboys heading into the LA Rams, where everybody's kind of written off the Rams at this point, but these are two teams, again, I think both can put points on the board. It should be a high-scoring affair. So quickly your thoughts on New England, Miami, and then take us through Dallas at LA.
Well, I think if it's a closer game, or a defensive kind of closer game, with the offenses there, we all talked about Fitzpatrick, and they still their ground game doesn't have really an explosive guy. They have 2 good receivers, in Miami, so they do have some possibilities of scoring. And our boy Gesicki eventually, might turn some of that athletic ability, into a decent season there. If it turns into a closer game, what'll be interesting is the field goal kickers for these teams. We don't even know who's playing yet for New England. He's going to hold that one all the way to the finish line. So it's either a rookie, or it's, Nick Falk, in there. And I think with everything else going on, it's very interesting to note that even though Jacoby Brissett did play a game at one time as a starting quarterback for the Patriots, this will mark the first time in the history of the Patriots that an African-American starts at quarterback week 1 for the New England Patriots. So Cam Newton really, getting an opportunity to reestablish himself and his career. I agree. I think it's a close game. The ex-Patriots that are down there with Miami, are playing against the Patriots, and that's still, something for them to get over. I think it gives them a sign that you're going to see two things. One, that the Patriots aren't completely knocked out yet. Two, that Miami's better than they have been and are moving in the right direction, like David said. But I see a 20-13, kind of an ugly 23-17, 23, type game, with the Patriots still doing enough defensively to get themselves a W. On the other side, I think the Cowboys and the Rams game could see a lot of points. Both of their secondaries, in total, are ones that are kind of, Dallas is losing Byron Jones and then doubling down, with Jordan Lewis being on IR. You flip to the other side, they have Ramsey. Okay, he's covering one guy. Who's covering the other guys? And I think it'll be real interesting with Mike McCarthy to see, is this not as heavy early with Ezekiel Elliott? Is this kind of start leaning toward, 10 or 12 more passes per game because of the weapons they have? I still think they can play well enough on the O-line, although the right tackle with, Cameron Irving will be, kind of an interesting situation for them to get through the first month of the season with him playing out there. And then I think all eyes defensively are, how good can this Rams defense be? Because they may need to carry a little more of the load, with Goff and the running game in transition. They're changing around their receivers. Josh Reynolds and Cooper Kupp are now going to be the mainstays. They don't have the Brandon Cooks guy at the moment. Real interesting to see Van Jefferson and what he can do, as a rookie. But they needed Wentworth to come back and play because that offensive line is at times challenged, and that's a nice way to put it. Whose pass rush, can get done, can get something done. And for the Cowboys, it's all about, boy, you have invested a lot of things offensively to then put your pass rush in the hands of Aldon Smith and Randy Gregory are expected to be real players for this team over the course of the season. And either Jerry Jones just has a soft spot for Randy Gregory, because Randy Gregory is right next to Josh McCown on having the best job ever, because he got an extension after not playing for 3 years. He just got an extension after not playing for 3 years because they hope he comes back week 7, and they're probably afraid if he does come back, he might get 5 to 7 sacks down the stretch. So at least they have him under contract. I think this is an all or nothing season, again, for the Cowboys. I think the Rams, they don't want to say they're in transition. Guess what? I'll say it for you. You're in transition. And I think this is an opportunity for the Cowboys to come out, outscore the Rams, and put themselves, into the next part of the rest of their season, which is really Super Bowl or bust.
Well, it's funny. The one thing that stood out to me in Hard Knocks, I keep hearing echoing in my head when Goff turned to the coach. It was like, just give me a good defense and I'll be a happy quarterback. That's all I ask. It's like, bro, how about you do your job? How about you do your job instead of being...
It's a lot harder to give you a good defense when you're making $28 million.
Yeah. And throwing an interception every game, 16 interceptions. He's the 22nd rated quarterback. Take it for what it's worth. But hey, how about you do your job instead of worrying about what the defense does, buddy? Jared Goff, I'll tell you, one of the most overrated players in the league. This guy is so overwhelmed. He's not a leader. He's not cerebral. I don't know what the Rams are doing giving that guy big money. Whew. David, any thoughts on the Rams and Cowboys?
Well, I don't know. Now, I had a couple, but okay. No. No, I'm with you with Goff. Like when Goff and Wentz got picked where they got picked, I had reports in the systems not liking either one of them really because of deficiencies in both their games. And I got killed, especially early on when people had success and everything. But now people are like, I think if they were to pull those out and dust them off, they'd be like, wow, he's kind of in the wheelhouse of what we're seeing. And like leadership to me with Goff was one of the things that that was a question mark on him. He kind of was just like, he's got a California surfer dude. He's not a gritty, Ben Roethlisberger or Phillip Rivers type that, when they step in the huddle and they start barking out a call, everybody goes, ooh, we better straighten up. We better get this right. You know what I mean? He's kind of like, okay, dudes, let's go play this one. Let's
go ride the waves.
Yeah, man. Like let's I'm gonna hit some golf balls in my backyard and my neighbor's gonna get mad, but okay, it's cool. Don't worry about it. So for me, it's just like that's how I feel about the kid. Now, I love honestly, I think the Rams have a good young defense. I think there's some key components that aren't getting respect right now that will by the end of the year. I think that what I saw on Hard Knocks and when I was peeking in on a little bit of tape that I got from them, I was like, ooh, the secondary is going to gel. I think Ramsey's going to solidify it, and it's going to gel, and it's going to come together. And their pass rush is pretty good. So I think the defense is going to be good. But like John said, I think everybody on the panel said or knows is that Dallas is all in this year. They did invest and bring in people to make this their run. And their receiving core, they got a triple-headed monster there that's really going to be impressive. I mean, we just talked about how a running game, keeps 7 in the box. Well, let's look at their receiving core. I mean, if you go 7 in the box versus that receiving core, you're going to have some trouble, and it's going to be some trouble for defenses. Those 3 receivers are really good. So, I'm excited to see them play some offense down there in Dallas. And honestly, with Mike's calls and Mike's personnel stuff, that if he was able to install what he used to do up in Green Bay down there, it's going to be really freakish. I remember when I was doing the advanced scouting for Oakland Raiders and we'd go play Mike's offense, and this dude ran more personnel groupings than I've ever seen in my life. Same play, just had a different personnel groupings and formations. So he kept it simple as far as play calls did for his players, but it caused havoc for the defensive substitutions all the time because they had to match up on all these different groupings. So, I'm really excited to see what Mike's offense looks like now down there. And I think the defense in Dallas is impressive. Injuries are going to be the key. Last night in Kansas City, we saw them have 3 defensive injuries. One of them was an elbow dislocation, and another one's a broken wrist. So, like I said, I think yesterday's show, the NFL is going to see what used to happen in preseason injury-wise now happen in the first month, and they got to see who has the horses to back it up and group and readjust, because you're about to see 100 guys get injured in the first 4 to 5 weeks here. Who those guys are, we don't know, but at the same time, it's about to happen. Statistically, history has shown us in training camp about 100 guys go down. That didn't happen because we didn't have the games. So here we go.
Yeah, and I think Darrell Henderson already banged up there for the Rams. I could see Cam Akers, the Florida State product, rookie running back, come out and make some plays here. But I think it's a coin toss game. I'll give the edge to the Cowboys just because, ironically, I think their offense is more high power than the Rams. And, David mentioned the trio of wide receivers, the 3 amigos. And I'm not talking about Vance Johnson, Mark Jackson, and Ricky Nattiel. I'm talking about Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb there in Dallas. So, hey.
And they still have Wilson. They still have Wilson. So, it's like you got these guys you got all these horses. You got thoroughbreds, Jerry. What are you going to do with them?
Well, that'll be the Sunday night game of the week, and shout out to all of our chat room peeps. By the way, we're here each and every weekday, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern. You can follow us and watch live on Twitter, on StreamYard, on Periscope. We're now streaming on Facebook Live. We also have the chat room comments open on YouTube. So if you want to ask questions on our shows next week, we'll be back with part 31 on Monday to break down all the NFL action, all the college football action. We'll preview the Monday night football games, just like we've previewed our Super Bowl predictions leading up to today. Drum roll, please. Just to recap some of our guests, I've been trying to keep tabs here. We had Russell Landy on, of course, Infectious Scouting. He had chosen the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. We also had Emery Hunt on from Football Game Plan, who chose the Ravens over the Cowboys. We had Our guy Ralph Ventry, NEC Ralph, picking the Bills over the 49ers, and he was not the only one to choose the Bills. Corey Yates from Recruiting Analytics has the Cowboys over the Chiefs. We had our good friend Justin Van Fulpen from Sport 5 choose the Chiefs over the Saints. Our good friend Neil Stratton from Inside the League has the Saints over the Chiefs. We have, who else? Joe Everett of the NFL Draft Bible, Chiefs over the Seahawks. Mike, I'm forgetting you. We know a lot of Mikes.
Pizza Mike.
Chiefs over the Saints. A lot of Chiefs, a lot of Saints. But John and myself have not chosen our Super Bowl predictions before we get there. David, I can't even remember if we had you choose a Super Bowl prediction. So even if you did, you get a redo, my brother. David Turner of Maverick Sports Consulting, hit us with your Super Bowl prediction, please.
I'm going unconventional. I'm going with something you've never heard before. And you know what? When it happens,
I'm writing this down now.
You write it down because you heard it here first. Like I said, what's going to be the key to a lot of this season? Injuries and injury management. Two of those organizations that I think, when I watch their rosters and their buildups and what they are composed of, that I am a big fan of, and I think they have built to put answers in the building right now, so they don't have to go shopping when those injuries happen. Colts versus Seattle. And I think Seattle comes out on top, and Russell Wilson's the league MVP. That's where I'm going right now.
Well, I will tell you this much. If that does occur, this could be a legacy game, right? Because, Phillip Rivers, to me, I don't view him as a Hall of Famer. I'm more of a product of the era. I thought it was fascinating where, like, 10 years ago, or maybe it was a bit further, there was, like, you can count on one hand how many guys completed 60% of passes. And I think last year it was like 20-something guys are completing 60% of the passes. And I think it's because of the rule changes. Does anybody realize that this guy almost passed for 5,000 yards? Well, I would think that was impressive, but I also lived to see when Dan Marino threw for 4,800 yards in a rushing dominant era, a guy that did not win a Super Bowl, a guy that did have the gaudy stats, but did it in an era where these rules weren't so lax. So to me, like, Phillip Rivers is a guy that's kind of like knocking on Canton's door. If he could win a Super Bowl with the Colts, I think maybe it gets him in. On the other hand, Russell Wilson wins another Super Bowl with Seattle and the MVP, like David says. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
So that would be a legacy game if it is indeed the Seahawks over the Colts. So David going out west with the Super Bowl winner in Seattle, our good friend Pete Carroll. And that is one Super Bowl prediction down, 2 to go. I go over to my co-host, John Murphy. We've been eagerly waiting and anticipating. Hit us, Johnny.
Well, I like where he's going with those two picks because, obviously we've been on the Colts bandwagon since the draft, just talking about them as a whole organization. And I think he's right that those are two teams that you have the right coaches, the right organization, and the right everything. So I think that's the main thing that you have to look at. And I see both of those teams making deep runs. I do see Seattle knocking out the Jerry Joneses in the playoffs, but I do then see Seattle having to make a trip south, which is where the Seahawks season will end in New Orleans. On the other side, I think this is what is able to get the Colts to have a shot of getting to the Super Bowl is their depth and the different ways that they can win. With a veteran quarterback, with that ground game, with their O-line, and with an improved defense and everyone healthy, they could give the Chiefs at least a game to where it could go differently. And I have the Colts upsetting the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl and we mentioned yesterday, or at least I did, that I have Phillip Rivers winning an MVP, which means Drew Brees will not ever finish with an MVP. However, what Drew Brees will finish with
hats and T-shirts, baby. Hats and T-shirts.
He will ride off into the sunset with a Super Bowl.
It's all LSU in New Orleans with this guy. He's Saints.
What a surprise. What a surprise.
Hey, and just so you realize, you gave credit to Hilaire and the guy who made the interception, who played in the NFLPA Bowl, was no other than Jarius Sneed, who played at Louisiana Tech, still a Louisiana school.
Well, we're throwing out NFLPA Bowl names. Deontay Harris out of Assumption there with my favorite player on the Saints. So, Drew Brees.
This was not an assumption. It is actually the selection.
So, Saints over the Colts for John. Seahawks over the Colts for David. I'm going to give you two different teams entirely. If you've been listening to the show, you heard my prediction, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I think will stumble out of the gates, but they will figure it out. They will figure it out. Bruce Arians and Tom Brady collectively will figure it out by the end of the season. They will sneak into those playoffs. I've got two wild card teams making the Super Bowls. Okay. And, for all the love I shine on those Arizona Cardinals, I do think that it will be the Bucs over the Cardinals in that NFC Championship. And somehow, some way, the Bucs will dagger and claw their way to
parts in Jersey.
Super Bowl. Okay. And, in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have the 1 seed, but they're going to lose. They're going to lose to a division rival who sneaks in again as the 6 seed. You will see in round 1, the upstart Las Vegas Raiders upset those Kansas City Chiefs. They will then move and work their way into New England, where they will again capture revenge from what's the Snowgate? What's the game called? The Snowgate. What do we call the Tuck game? They're going to get their revenge from the Tuck game. They're going to upset the Patriots. That is a flashback. And we're going to have a rewind, bring it back to 2003, where John Gruden is now finding himself on the opposite sideline once again in Las Vegas wearing the Raider black. The silver and black is back, the attack. And he'll match up against Tom Brady and those Buccaneers. And drum roll, please. Who's going to come out on top? It's going to be a storybook ending. Tom Brady, you might as well just ride off into the sunset after this one is all said and done. They're going to find a way to make it happen, hoist that trophy. I believe that would be the 10th Super Bowl that Tom Brady plays in. And believe you me, I've got an asterisk next to all 6 of those wins. However many Super Bowls he's got, I got an asterisk, big double asterisk next to all of them. But he's going to finally win one and win one legitimately, and that is with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So David goes Seahawks over Colts. Johnny goes Saints over Colts. And RIC goes, I never thought I'd do it. Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over John Gruden and the Las Vegas Raiders. He got it done with Brad Johnson. He won't get it done with David Carr, but they'll go pretty far. And there you have it, our state of football, Super Bowl predictions. I don't know if we can end on a much higher note than that, but a parting shot from David Turner, who, oh, by the way, he's not done yet tonight. We'll be back at it Friday night. Oh, at about only 11 hours from now for Friday Night Scout School. Make sure you tune in for that. David, give him a sneak peek preview there and a parting shot for the people.
Sneak peek preview is we're going up. We're doing press corners. We're doing zone corners tonight. You want to learn why the cover guys and the Deion Sanders get paid so much money and Ramsey just got cashed in? come join us. We're going to show you all about it tonight, how these cover guys make the difference in defenses. Helps the defensive coordinator call all the plays that they need to get pressure on the quarterback. Parting shot, it's September 11th. Let's not forget. Let's never forget. You know, I was at home getting ready to head into San Francisco, and I got told, you know, all the part systems and everything were closed down, and turned on the TV, and I ran down the stairs to my mother and my stepfather and showed them what was going on, and watched as everybody did in just complete disarray. And like you said earlier, and I want to echo it, Rick, at the beginning, you said we need to galvanize behind each other in America and really drive what's special about Americans is that we all have each other's back, no matter what. And September 11th was a moment we remembered that, and right now is a moment we fucking forgot it, and we got to remember that because this is America, and we do have each other's back no matter what. So let's remember that today and carry that forward instead of what we see going on each and every day all over each and everybody's news channels. Because those folks on Flight 93, they didn't think about anybody but saving American lives. They did not get selfish. They went and they saved American lives. And that's what today is about.
Couldn't have said it better myself. John Murphy, of course, New York roots, down in New Orleans, parting shot here on September 11th.
Yeah, I was telling David before we were starting, and then didn't get to finish it. And you know, Rick, basically, I went to school with somebody at every level, grade school, high school, and college, who unfortunately passed that day, as well as Henry Broghammer, who was my baseball and Little League baseball and bowling coach as a kid. And unfortunately, he was in the city that day going to work. So one guy I want to make mention of, John Damian Vicasio. He was actually one of the final few people whose remains they ever found. Was in the North Tower. At that time was probably only about 30 years old, went to grade school and high school with him. Probably one of the most popular kids, that would ever be in your classroom, or, just light of the party, type guy. And this is a guy who was at that time working for Cantor Fitzgerald. You could look that up and know what kind of job he had at that time. So for a 30-year-old guy who liked to talk a lot, and for somebody who likes to talk a lot, that's saying a lot. Damian was a guy that didn't mind boasting, that he had this job and where his career was headed. But he was also the type of person that, by having that type of job, working in that kind of business, suit and tie, downtown Wall Street every day, you go to a lot of dinners. And one of the things that Damian would do is he would always take the leftovers and ask everybody at the table to give him the leftovers. And he would go and find homeless people on his way home and bring the dinners from the business meetings he had to the homeless people. And a quick funny story is that he one time dropped off the leftover steak dinner that he had just had at a downtown restaurant to a homeless guy that he had met a numerous amount of times on his walks back and forth from work, and gave it to the guy. And the next day he was coming by in the morning and saw the same guy and said, "Hey, how did you enjoy your dinner?" And the homeless guy said to him, "Yeah, I've had better." And, but that was the kind of guy, that he was. And unfortunately on, September 11th, he went to work and he was in the North Tower. And we're just minutes away from, when the North Tower, ceased to exist. So if you're ever in New York and you go downtown to the 9/11 memorial, you can go to the North Tower side and go all the way to the end of the alphabet. And you'll see John Damian Vicasio listed on there. So take a minute today if you can. I mean, I surely enjoy, spending an hour every day talking about football and, joking around and doing this stuff. But, if you want to do something for an hour today, just kind of, run by the list of names. And there may not be one that sticks out to an individual the same way it does to me. But, if you want to spend an hour doing something today, maybe just go through the list of names and just for a minute kind of think about, what that would have been like. 30-year-old guy that's in the prime of his life, has a job that he's worked for to get to, and you're in the 53rd floor, I believe, in the North Tower. And that's kind of what happened on the morning of September 11th, 2001.
Yeah, it's hard to believe 19 years ago. So there's a lot of people who don't remember it, and they hopefully will understand the significance and value. The message I delivered at the beginning, the message that David just delivered, believe me, it's tough to get through this show. I got my emotions out early this morning, just like David here. And so we all feel it. We've all got stories. I was a senior in college up in Providence, Rhode Island, just like everybody else, watching on TV, helpless. I remember my mom was working in the city at the time as a hairdresser. And the one thing I do remember is that is when cell phones really first had come out. And I remember that when this whole tragedy happened, you could not get reception at all. And so you couldn't find out who was safe. You couldn't find out what was going on. All you could do was stand there and watch helplessly on the TV. And, there's so many people that have been impacted to it. I do want to give John Stewart a shout out here because he fought hard for the first responders to make sure that they get full medical coverage for their entire lives. And this is something the GOP did not want to do. John Stewart helped fight for this, and I believe yesterday succeeded. And so all the first responders will be covered. And I don't think we do enough for the first responders. And, think about this, for all the hatred for the first responders and especially the police officers out there in the current climate. I understand there's been some incidents that, have a lot of hatred towards them. But I'm telling you, the positive far outweighs the negative. It's not even close. And these guys, I mean, they didn't even think twice. They put their life on the line to never be seen or heard from again, to rescue people they didn't even know. So, think about that for a second. With all the hatred and all the animosity out there, take a second, like my co-host here said today, spend a few minutes to reflect. And if you weren't alive, if you're not old enough to remember, take a few minutes to just go and study up on it, because I haven't read a history book in school, but this was a very important chapter in our history. Again, our JFK moment, and we will never forget.
Yeah, for sure. And just to tap off what you said, if you want to look at things, and we all can with everything we're dealing with, everything we've seen, it's very easy to look at and pinpoint and look at the George Floyd incident and label all police, in that way. Well, I'll challenge you and give you a new name, and his name is Chris Amorosa. And here's what I want you to do. Go Google that and look that up and tell me what you would call somebody who does what that guy did. He had already brought 5 different people down, had a pregnant wife at home, and at 29 years old, went back up after hearing the alarm and the system being sounded for everyone to clear out of the building. And instead said, well, wait a minute, I just saw 2 other people or other people. I can't just forget what I just saw. And when everyone else was running out of the building, there's actually video that I think shows him at one point. You can see him turn back around and go back while the alarm is going off, and everyone else, thousands, are running away. And he is running back in, knowing that he's 29 years old, knowing that he has a 4, 5, or 6 month pregnant wife at home. And he's running back into the building. So it's easy to say and label somebody and label a group of people one way. I would ask you, how would you label somebody who does something like that? And it's not the only story. Like that's just one person who did something like that. And you can read story after story after story of people, who have had and done amazing things that day. And I think it really does go back to saying, if people looked at, how they were feeling in those days, how you could go down the street even for weeks and months afterwards. I know from going home, and visiting my family, the one thing that I noticed when I turned down the street the first time to go home after 9/11 was how many people had their flags out. How many people were interacting with each other, how many things you could do. And, you'd be in the parking lot at the store and people were giving up parking spots in New York. And you know how hard that is, and stuff. I think it's, the little things like that. And don't make it be that you need a 9/11. Don't make it that you need a pandemic, right? Don't make it, be that you need to have something that strikes us, so deeply, that it makes you go back and live your life accordingly or the way that you would like to without any of those things. Because I think every time you dare to, to try to act separately or try to act like you can do it all on your own, we are struck back into the reality, that when a 9/11 happens or a pandemic happens or a situation like what we've seen with George Floyd happen, we will not accomplish too much more than we already haven't apart if we continue to just try to keep doing things that way.
Well said. We wrap things up here on 9/11, the state of football. I remember on the Jersey side, we used to look at the buildings. You could see them literally swaying in the wind. And with that said, we wave goodbye. We will see you, everybody, on Monday.